What a perfect beginning. That was absolutely lovely. That was absolutely great. So this is the last in a series, 8-week series that I've been doing on the nature of harmony. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a recap as to where we've got to at the moment. So we're not just talking about music harmony. We're talking about, for example, psychological harmony is a positive state of inner peace, calmness and balance, as well as the feeling of being in tune with the world. You started out really well, Nina. And we've looked at the idea that to create harmony in our lives, first of all, we have to create harmony in ourselves. That's a prerequisite for it. And to do that, we have to really identify, which we did when we walked in here, identify the still point within ourselves, that point in our soul, like a gyroscope, that still point where everything is in balance. And that's where our spiritual practice comes in. We had a bit of a chat about that. You have to get yourself in the game by literally, metaphorically, putting up your sails so that the spiritual wind can catch you and steer you into a path that creates harmony. And that's what spiritual practice is about. Perceiving that universal harmony. Einstein said for him, God was the God who reveals himself in the harmony of all that exists. God is a God that reveals himself in a harmony of all that exists. Because the one thing that we have to realize that despite what we see on the news every day, harmony is the state that the cosmos continues to exist in. If not, none of us would be here. Harmony is the state the world is fundamentally ordered. Just as the atoms are in order and move in an orderly fashion, the whole of the universe exists in a state of harmony. In other words, it becomes, that part of God that expresses itself in that harmony. And we looked at how to connect with that harmony from our bodies through really being in the present moment. That is how you connect with that harmony. Using the present moment as a control panel to make a difference to the world around us and being in harmony with our lives. Then we looked at the idea of connecting with harmony by being aware of really what Jesus said. He says, I only do what I see the Father doing. I only do what I see the Father. And he says, I'm just looking out there and seeing what's going on and getting in line with that. Connecting through seeing what the most loving thing to do is in any situation. You connect with what is the most loving thing to do in any situation. Then we looked at disharmony, how all of the universe is in harmony, and that disharmony that we largely experience is a function of human activity. And last week we looked at the way to create harmony in the world is by creating the space for it to happen. That actually everything, this is what we're going to do, everything in the universe, and I had evidence of this last week, but I'm not going to bore you with this. So everything in the universe is 99.99% space. And all the atoms and stuff like that. You are 99.99% space. We are rich in space. And therefore, funny enough, what we have to give, and the key thing that we have to give, and that's where I came to at the end of it, what we have to give is space. We have to give space for things to happen. Rather than focusing on arranging the 0.001% that's matter, which is what we always do, like trying to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. We think that matter's what's important. What I was suggesting last week, we should focus on the 99.99% space and create the space for harmony to happen. Now, if you have any desire to hear any of those, the red card in front of you on the seat will show you where to get the podcasts and the videos of the previous talks. And if you want to be on our email list, then please use the blue cards, and you can just drop that in the plate or whatever it is. But I'm now going to do a test for you. You're going to have. I threatened an exam last week, and you are going to have an exam now. First time I've ever had an exam in the service. Now, what's going to happen is that Andrew is going to come up and read something. And I want you to look in this reading. He's going to read the story of the prodigal son. And I want you to look in this story and to see where one of the characters or another of the characters creates space in order for something to happen. So we're looking at where in this story space is being created, and I'm going to be testing you afterwards to see how well. So Andrew, do you want to come up and read this now? And we'll then have the exam after that. So why don't you come up and do that?
This is the parable of the lost son. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided the property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'"
Thank you, Andrew. That's lovely. So the question is, where in that story was space given and so that healing could take place or something could take place? I need some ideas. Yes.
Where the son said, "I'm not worthy to come back." He gave him the space to make up his own mind if he wanted to be accepted. He says, "I just want to work for you. I just want to come back."
Yes. So he gave him space to actually to come back. He said he wasn't worthy, and he came back in. Yeah, that's great. Okay. That's fantastic thing. Where else was space given? Now, come on, you're going to have to... Yes, thank you for John. Come on, you can tell where space is given. Tons of places.
Just the rebirth or the reborn or the Renaissance man coming from space. And then I thought about that calf. By slaughtering the calf, there's more space for all the other calves and more food.
Yes, that's right. Very good, thank you very much. Animal-minded. Where else was space given? Yes, that's very good. You've been listening online, haven't you? And you've come to see us today. That's great. Yeah, so...
I think I'm going to state the obvious. When the father first gave half the estate, and then also when the son came back home and the father wanted to celebrate the finding of the lost son.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing, when the son said, "I want to go and have half my estate and go off and squander it," by coming to Aspen, he gave him the space to do it, and he gave him the space to come back in. That's absolutely right. Any other places you can see? Yes, Andy.
I think when the father asked the older son to give space to accepting the younger son back.
Absolutely. He said, look, hey, man, give some space to this guy. He's just come back. And he also gave the space for the older son to actually enter into his rightful place, which is, I've always loved you. You've got everything. So had that space. Any other ones you can see? Yes, there we are.
Well, I have a very literal mind, so I saw the space that was going to change everything as the distance that the son was walking and the father saw him, and there was a big space, and
Yes.
the father crossed it.
That's
And
fantastic.
it was like I felt that he had to cross that space in order for anything to happen.
Absolutely. There was a space there between them, and he allowed that space to happen. Also, the man that gave him the pigs to look after, he gave him space, didn't he? To actually, he had nothing to eat, and he said, I'll give you a job. You can look after my pigs. So that was space. Any other ones you can see? The prodigal son gave himself space to go home, didn't he? When he came to his senses, he said, he really gave himself, and we have to give ourselves this, he gave himself the space to say, okay, this is not working. You know, I moved to Carbondale. You know, I'm looking after pigs down here. Yeah, I want to go back to Denver. Yes, yeah.
Well, now it feels like a stretch, but I think he also gave the pigs space because he didn't steal from the pigs.
He didn't steal. No, listen, that's great. No, listen, you get the, first, absolutely 9 out of 10 for that. Could have been a bit quicker on the uptake, but you get the idea. You see in that story how much the giving of space allowed for the harmony to happen. The father gave all the space, really, because he gave the space for the Blake to go away, and he gave the space for Blake to come back, and he gave the space for the older child. It's all about giving space. And you can see the effects that it has. Here's what Zen Master Dogen from the 13th century, we're looking at space now, and the emptiness that we give. Zen Master Dogen says, mountains, rivers, earth, moon, stars, in fact everything, are all mind. 1 billion worlds and innumerable lands can be found in the mountains. Mountains are suspended in form. Mountains are suspended in emptiness. Earth is not necessarily ground, and ground is not necessarily earth. It's not that there is no earth, but invariably there is a world where emptiness is earth. There's a world where emptiness is earth. That was written in the 13th century. And only in this century, last 100 years, have we discovered that we do have emptiness within us. That is, what he was saying there is an absolute truth based upon the science that given the size of atoms and nucleuses, we are all basically empty, and the whole world is empty. We have space within, and the way we create harmony in the world is by giving space so that the world can heal itself. And you know, that is the great secret hidden in plain sight. The nothingness of space. And when we offer the world that no thing, when we offer the world that space, then it can heal itself. And we create space everywhere. I was saying last week, here we are creating space for understanding. We're creating space for a spiritual perspective to come along. If me telling you what the situation doesn't create space, that forces you into a direction. But if I can create space, you can move out from where you are. It's only when we try to prescribe things that conflict arises. When you offer space, then most of the time, healing can come through. And we have to look at our lives and at how we can give space in our lives for healing to occur. And that means being the adult in the room. We often, I find we often bemoan ourselves, don't we? So why does it always have to be me that has to be the adult in the room? Why can't someone else be the adult in the room? Can't they look after it? It's always me that has to give and stuff like that. But that is the nature of the spiritual life. The nature of the spiritual life is that we take responsibility. We see that what we do matters. You see that in the spiritual life, the connectedness. We see that what we do matters. And because we are intimate, we have an intuitive relationship with the universe, a unitive relationship with the universe. We have it within our power to make a difference. So it's we who have to take the lead in these situations. We have to be the adult in the room, and we have to work out how to give the space for healing to happen. It's when we don't do that that conflict carries on. When we think they're the ones, that they made me upset, so they should sort it out. No, you still got to do it. We need to be that adult, because the reason we need to do it, because there is still discernment involved in the process of giving space. You have to work out what to do. Just letting people do whatever they want to do is not giving space. That's not giving space. You're not giving space to an addict when you give them money to buy drugs. That's not giving them space. Creating space is having the wisdom to know what will give space and what will lead to a disaster. I can remember when I was in England, I used to, as a vicar, I used to wear a dog collar sometimes, mainly to funerals. I don't often wear it now, but we call it a dog collar, you call it a clerical collar. And the trouble is, when you wear a clerical collar, you're a mark. People can see you coming a mile away, and particularly people, gentlemen of the road, as we call them in England, who sort of... And I saw this, I was walking up Tunbridge Wells High Street, I saw this bloke sitting at the side of the road, and I just knew that he was going to come to me. I mean, it doesn't look very good when someone comes to you and asks for money and you say no. So you have to prepare yourself. What do? It's obviously worse for wear. So, he obviously wanted money for drink and things like that. So I was really worried about what to do. Anyway, I walked up there and I could feel myself trying to prepare myself. I didn't know how I was going to strike. Anyway, he rushed up to me and he gave me a £10 note. And I was totally flummoxed. I didn't know what was going on. Why is he giving me a £10 note? He said, "Oh, Father, they won't serve me in the liquor store in there. Take this £10. Would you go and buy me some drink in there, please, Father?" I thought, yeah, okay. So I went and bought him the drink. I mean, I was so flummoxed by him. But, you have to have that sense. You have to have that sense of discernment as to what to do. And it's not easy. When we go there, we find the space, and we allow ourselves to have that space, and we allow ourselves to actually create the space for other people. You have to have wisdom to give space. That's why it depends on us. That's why spiritually, it's you that has to do it, because it requires wisdom. You can see it with children. How do you give them the space to learn without giving them too much space so they get into trouble? I mean, that's just the whole parenting thing, isn't it? You have to work that out. When do you tell an older person that it's time for them to stop driving? Or when someone needs to move into assisted living? I mean, these are sort of really difficult, discerning situations. There are difficult decisions that need wisdom. And there's a difference between giving space and imposing your will on others because it will do them good. You have to be aware of that whole scene as well. We have that space and knowledge within us. We have to reflect before we act, to create the space within ourselves for that wisdom to occur. And, endlessly I've used this quote, but I'm going to come back to it, this Viktor Frankl quote. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. That's really what that wisdom sensing is about. In that space is also our ability to create our growth and freedom for others. If we have that space, we can create the growth and freedom to others. We have to go within. And when you go within, you find that space. Okay, a bit icky, but I'm going to ask you to just close your eyes for a moment. Just close your eyes for a moment. Just close your eyes. Just pay attention to your breath. As we did at the beginning, just lessen the mind's chatter. And what do you find within? You don't find the jarring disharmony of the material world. You find space within, peace and harmony within. We all have that within ourselves. Everyone does. And that's what we have to give. Okay, you can open your eyes now. I just want you to get that sense that when you do go there, it is space inside. When you go there, we find space. We can share that space with others. This is what mindfulness is really about. Being mindful that in every conversation, in every interaction, we can be looking for how to give space so that we can enrich the person that we're with. Not imposing our views on them, but giving them the space to find the views within themselves that are loving and enriching. Because everyone has that within them, no matter how mean they are or how mean they present themselves to the world, within they do have that if they're willing to look. And that's where harmony comes from. I find a fantastic quote from Hazrat Inyat Khan in his book, The Heart of Sufism, which I'm reading at the moment, so you'll probably get it quite a lot over this next period of time. But he says, harmony is the means by which life creates its purpose. Harmony is the means by which life creates its purpose. And the lack of it, the lack of harmony, results in destruction. Harmony is the means by which life creates its purpose. It is the divine manifesting in creation. God revealing herself in the harmony of all that exists. And our role in that is to allow life to fulfill its purpose by allowing harmony to manifest itself in our lives. That is our role in life. It occurs when we do not force ourselves on others to control, but when we allow the space for others to come towards us and connect with us in a loving way. It is a governing principle that can transform all relationships, because that's the way the universe works. That's how it works. It is fundamentally in harmony, and we have to allow that harmony to manifest in our lives and in the lives around us. We don't have harmony come about by insisting our way. I'm on the last page, so. We have harmony come about by giving the space for it to naturally manifest, and it wants to come into being. Harmony wants to manifest. In the material world, it is insistent on its manifestation, which is why you get storms, earthquakes, and natural disasters. Storms, earthquakes, and natural disasters are the earth adjusting itself. I'm not in harmony. I need a storm. I need my tectonic plates to change. I need to get back into a place of rest. That's why you get all that stuff. Harmony finding a way through those disasters to return the earth to a place of peace. And it can also happen in our own lives if we're willing for it to happen. And the way we avoid having our own personal storms, earthquakes, and disasters is to create the space for harmony, for it to manifest naturally in our lives so that it doesn't have to insist on its way like some natural corrective. We have the choice to choose the way of harmony and live as that still point in a turning world. Or we can try and have our own way and get sucked into the vortex of collective ambition. And the way we do that is by creating the space within ourselves to resource us, and the space outside ourselves to enable those around us to manifest that harmony. Because those mountainous problems that we face are, as Zen Master Dogen says, they're mountains suspended in form, but they are also mountains suspended in emptiness. And when we focus on the emptiness, then the form has a way of merging into the emptiness. and the mountains are no longer mountainous. They don't have to be overcome because we've created a space for them to disappear. We are vehicles through which harmony can come through. We just have to create the space for it to happen. So classy, thank you, that was fantastic. So, those who haven't been before for a while, we'd just like to give people an opportunity to come back at me for anything that I've said. We give this out with a willingness to be wrong. If you have something you want to share or anything you want to contribute, please, now's the time to do that. I just want to give you the space to do that. Anybody like to say anything? Yes, great, thank you, Mo.
Well, I'm a movement person, so I always start out by coming from my center and allowing one movement to move into the next. And it's amazing how that takes you into so many different spaces. And you do it fast or slow, but it's an amazing way to connect with yourself, and then with others.
That's so interesting, and you notice it with musicians, don't you? Nina as well. Always start with a silence. There's a pause.
And you move from that.
You move from that outwards.
And just allow.
Yeah.
One movement.
Yeah.
To move into the next, and it's such a joyful experience when you begin to feel that flow moving through you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Anybody else like to say anything? There's also the space not to say anything as well. So the silence of not saying anything.
Can you just repeat that quote at the end of your homily?
Which quote was that?
Literally the last line.
The last line from my talk? Yeah. The last line from my talk. Okay. I've got everything out of order now. I don't know what really... There we are. Oh, it says end at the end, yes. We are vehicles through which harmony can come through. We just have to create the space for it to happen. Yeah? One thing I would want to say was, that story of the prodigal son, it shows how we have it's all about free will, the space to do, everyone says here, we have the space to actually not do the right thing, or to do the right thing, or to do what's in harmony, if you like. And the Father gave the Son the space just to go off and do whatever. And we have that choice in our lives. That's why it's free will, is that we can choose to be with what is happening, or we can insist on our own way. And I think it's really great. That story is a real metaphor. Obviously, God's the Father, and the Son's us, and then the elder son is the one that's, has been going to church all the time and, stayed with the program. And, what do I mean? Why can't I go up and spend all my money? And why does it, so there is that space for us to choose to do what we want to do. Yes, Lou.
What I find so powerful about this story, about the prodigal son, is the son who stayed around says, it's not fair.
Yeah.
And I think we so often get stuck in, it's not fair.
Yeah.
And yet the father was so wise to say, well, yeah, but I love both of my sons.
Yeah.
And that's paramount.
Yeah. It's lovely. Anybody else?
I just had a little bit more to
Yes,
add.
absolutely. I mean, you've got the space to say that.
Once you get into the flow and you allow that, then you shake it all loose and just let it go poof.
That's great. We should be having some liturgical dancing at some point, I'm sure, over the next few weeks. It'll be lovely. Yes, I'll come to you and then Siam. Yeah.
I have a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old who spent the summer not doing their summer homework. And now that school's about to start in 3 days, they have 7 weeks of math to do. And it really hit home when you said harmony is not letting people do whatever they want to
Yes.
do. In terms of parenting, I was thinking, I let them do a lot of nothing for 2 months. Where was I?
Yes.
But I forgave myself really quickly. I'll add that too. I think it's a learning experience for our family.
Yes, there's always that famous phrase, remember last year, when you waited till the last moment and there was a panic. Yes, Siam, you wanted to say something.
I have a question. So, giving the addict money to get more drugs is not giving space, is that right?
No, it's not.
It's not. So the father giving the son, who knew he was going to party with the money, how is that different?
Well, his father, he wasn't, he did say, like, I just want to go off, have half my, I want to make good for myself. I think that's fair enough.
Gotcha.
He didn't actually say, I'm going to go off and, lose it all straight away.
But he kind of knew, because when the son came back, he said, he was dead before. But okay, that was a question.
It does take discernment, doesn't it? Yeah. It does take wisdom to work out what is the right thing to do. When do you say no, and when do you say yes? And I think that's why it's so important for us to be centered in our own harmony, because only then can we have that wisdom come through. And it's different in every single situation. There could be a situation where it is right to give an addict drugs. And there's a situation where it's not right. But it's our role to discern that, what's going to happen.
And it was his. The father had decided to give it to him.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
he at least asked. He didn't try to steal it. Yeah. And I wanted to say, I was working my booth yesterday with Lydia, and Myrna Ray came by, and it was funny because it was kind of a slow market, and we were just bored and so tired. And we just started dancing. And I swear it woke us up, it cheered us up, and nothing else mattered. Our tiredness, not selling a terribly huge amount, none of it mattered. We just started finding joy. Yeah. And then we shook it off and went on with the day. So thank you, Myrna Ray.
Carol. We'll finish if we can, then we'll have Karen, and then we'll finish.
I think, too, you can appreciate how the older son felt.
Yeah.
I've been working in these fields all this time while he's been out there, doing whatever he wanted to do. Now he comes begging back. But then you look at the son, the second son, and he was willing to go out in the fields, make a living, working for his dad, and all the rest didn't matter anymore. And when the father said to the older son, you will get yours, everything I own is yours, he gave him space to think about what he was going to do.
Yeah. That's lovely, Carol. Thank you. Karen, and then I'll come to you, and then we will finish.
Nicholas, I've been meaning to ask you, how does the word harm fit in with harmony?
I think it's just the HARM. I think that just as the word ant doesn't necessarily go with deviant, especially because there's an E at the end of it, I don't necessarily think it does. But I have to think about that, and I'll come back to you. Yeah.
I was waiting in the story for the son who had experienced nothing, loss and all that, to come back and then somehow have a plan to distribute, give back, some of the wealth.
Yes.
And that didn't happen. He just went home where it was safe and cushy. Yeah. And so what did he learn?
Well, I think that is like, the prodigal son 2, what he learned. But unfortunately, I think that Jesus didn't do the prodigal son 2, what he learned. And I think that had a Hollywood producer come to him, this is room for a second one here. So, but I think we could make it up and think, that what did happen after. So you're quite right. I think certain things are contained within a certain learning experience. And obviously, there's other stuff, did he give it away? Or